we see things that much of society is not used to being exposed to.
The defendant in that case was a romantic partner of Dr. Garcia's who planned for weeks, possibly months, his poisoning.
I've been doing this work for 25 years now, and I wouldn't want to do anything else. I wouldn't want to practice any other area of law. I'm proud to be a part of a section that has a direct impact on child safety.
So last year, Mr. Downs was sentenced to 75 years to serve in jail for the rape and the murder of Sophie Sergey. That crime had been unsolved for 2.5 decades. It was a crime that had had a significant impact on the Fairbanks community and particularly on the UAF community. Students, a decade later knew about the murder and the rape of Ms. Sergey, whose body was found in the bathroom of a dormitory, and which had very lingering and long-lasting effects on the security and the sense of safety that a lot of UAF students felt. The DNA was uploaded into CODIS decades ago, and it was sitting in there waiting for there to be a match or waiting for the perpetrator's DNA to be input into CODIS if, say, he were to be arrested for another crime. That never occurred, so there was never a match in that system. So this was why the state trooper investigator chose to take that unknown profile and use genetic genealogy in order to try to expand the potential matches. We were able to match it to a woman who turned out to be an aunt of Stephen Downs. And then when investigators did further research, they were able to find that he had in fact been in Fairbanks in 1993 and in fact had been living in the same dorm where Ms. Sergey was found dead.
So in 2023, I began the year with having approximately 30 homicides. During the course of the year, 11 of those have resolved. I think 8 of them have been shooting cases. 2 of them involved either a stabbing or, in one case, it was the use of a hatchet on an individual. And the last one involved a beating/strangulation death. In 2023, of the cases that I prosecuted and convicted of murder, were all sentenced to over 50 years, 35 years, and 30 years.
This last year, I've had numerous trials and that I've traveled for that have taken several weeks each, and a couple that particularly stand out to me are 2 cases out of Western Alaska in the Bethel region. The first is an Akiachuk case in which a teacher and self-proclaimed pastor in the village was sexually abusing students, and after a 3-week trial at which 32 different witnesses testified, the jury found him guilty on all 15 counts, and he is looking at a sentencing range of 40 years to 496 years.
I feel like I've done just a little bit to make the world a better place. My personal view is that there is nothing more important than children being loved and cared for and growing up to be functional adults. And unfortunately, there's too many children out there who don't have that opportunity because of their living situation. So I feel good about representing the agency that steps in and helps these families either get better or get the children in a place where they will become healthy and functional.
The victim in Alaska v. Joplin was Dr. Eric Garcia. He was a surgeon in the community of Ketchikan. He was a pillar of the community in Ketchikan, being one of only 2 general surgeons. At times he was the only general surgeon, and his loss was very acutely felt by that community. The defendant in that case was a romantic partner of Dr. Garcia's who planned for weeks, possibly months, his poisoning, and then stole hundreds of thousands of dollars from him after Dr. Garcia's death. My co-counsel Mark Clark and I took that case to jury trial, and ultimately the jury convicted Mr. Joplin of murder in the 1st degree, murder in the 2nd degree, and theft in the 1st degree. And although he hasn't been sentenced, Mr. Joplin is facing 109 years.
This year we had 2 large multi-state settlements, once against Google for deceptive practices regarding when it was tracking users' locations, and one against Indivior, a drug company that used anti-competitive practices to suppress generic competition against its name brand drug Suboxone. Those settlements brought in more than $2.5 million to the state of Alaska. And those were great cases. But the cases I'm most proud of are the ones where we put money directly into the hands of Alaskans. We had 3 of those cases this year. One against a large student loan servicer, one against a local cosmetics company, and one against an out-of-state junk mail marketer. Those cases put more than $750,000 back in Alaskans' pockets.
The Willow Project is a significant oil and gas project in the National Petroleum Reserve in Alaska. It's one of the largest reserves in the nation, and the Willow Project is anticipated to produce significant oil that will potentially bring billions of dollars to Alaskans. The state was part of a team and really helped allow the project to go forward for the next stages.
So I asked the Court of Appeals to basically stop the order that the district court had issued that would have, or that had effectively beached the fishery, and people couldn't go fishing without repercussion of criminal and huge civil fines, like bankruptcy-inducing fines. They couldn't have fished with that looming over their head fish. And everyone who's in that industry, in the secondary industry, is affected by it, and the family is affected by it, and like all the communities. Before I got the order, and I just started shaking, because it's very hard to get a motion for stay granted. A stay pending appeal granted, which is what we did, and so I just shouted, "Fishing is on!"
There was a decision, Sackett versus EPA, and that was before the U.S. Supreme Court. In that case, the state filed what we call an amicus brief. It's a friend of the court brief where we emphasize the importance of this issue to the state. And the things that we brought up were that given how the court could come out on that decision, over 50% of the state could be federally regulated waterways. That's 174 million acres of land when we have 365 million acres of land. And that was successful because the Supreme Court said, wait a second, federal government, you need a more limited interpretation of your jurisdiction. And it's limited to wetlands that have a surface water connection to traditionally navigable waterways. The federal government no longer can regulate these isolated wetlands that have no connection to something that's going to go in or out of the state of Alaska. We call interstate waterways. And again, our position is we have state environmental laws. We have the capacity to do this. The federal government does not need to step in and do it for us. They should allow the state to do it on its own.
It was a 6-week-long program that allowed students the opportunity to come to the DA's office every week, meet with us, see what we do, to meet with Alaska State Troopers, meet with Fairbanks police officers, to meet with various judges within the Alaska court system. They even got to meet with an FBI agent. They also got to meet with defense practitioners and hear about the work that they do on their side of the case. All in all, we ended up graduating 38 students at the end of this program.
I just wanted to make sure you all knew how appreciative that I am of the work that you do day in and day out, and in some very tough, demanding situations, emotionally draining situations, and with a lot riding on the line. Alaska thanks you, this governor thanks you, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of that hard work and dedication. We are AK Law.
We are AK Law.